Hello everybody and welcome back to Spirit of Creating, and today I'm really happy to announce I have my first ever guest, and this is the great GeorgieStClair, and I'm going to hand over to Georgie, who is the creator of Spot the Scroll and artist and mindfulness meditation teacher in training. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Georgie, to introduce yourself.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me on. It's I feel very honoured to be your first guest, actually. So yeah, what do you want to know? Do you want to know about me, what I'm doing?
I want to know about what you're doing now and your creative journey, because you've had quite a journey, and I've been following you on Instagram for years. And so I'd like to know about the journey, how you got onto Instagram, how you started your creative journey, and what you've been going through in the most recent times to where you are now, and what's brought you to mindfulness and linking that with creativity.
Okay, well, I'll try not to go on for too long. Just tell me if I'm talking.
Feel free.
Okay, so Instagram. Wow, I've been there for quite a long time. I started Instagram when my daughter was born, as a way of being creative and sharing what I was doing when she was napping, and that she's 8 now, so it's quite a while ago. And yeah, it just sort of started from there. I'm not a trained artist. I'm sort of self-taught. I've done graphic design for years, worked in digital marketing, made websites, a bit techie, you know, so I'm not new to creativity, but being an artist wasn't my path at the time. So yeah, she was born. So I was just mucking around with my phone, as you did in those days, and this amazing app called Instagram came along, and I was posting what I was making. And because I just had this sort of time out while she was napping, I was playing with flowers because they were around, they were like accessible. Yeah. So I was playing with the flowers and photographing and posting, blah, blah, blah. And it, you know, it was those days where it was a lovely community, and you got engagement, and you could see things in chronological order, and we'd chat, and you got to know people. It was lovely, built up this lovely community of people. And it just grew from there. I just think I got lucky. There's obviously the flower thing on Instagram is really big. And I think I got in there at a good time, really. And I started mixing. It was basically a sketchbook, really. I was mixing the flowers, and I was playing around with illustration. I was putting the two together with some photography, and yeah, and it was a pure experiment, and people seemed to like what I was doing. And I created this character called Sassy Du Fleur.
Yes, I remember her.
She did so well. I sometimes think about bringing her back.
Bring her back, even if she just makes a cameo appearance every now
and then. Should I? Oh, that's interesting to hear, because people seem to love her.
Yeah, and if we followed you from the beginning, she's someone we associate slightly with you. Like when you said the illustration with the flowers, that really triggered the first.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Oh, I might have to, because I went off her for a really long time, but I'm back.
Bring her back
now. Bring her back.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was the one that did me well, really. She was this little character with these little flower dresses, and she was all pretty and pastel, and it was all very lovely, and I suppose a little bit of escapism. And she got picked up and shared a lot. And then she was picked up by brands, and they wanted me to create illustrations for. The best thing that ever happened was I created some makeup packaging. So I've got lipsticks with Sassy Du Fleur on and stuff. Yeah, that was one of the best things that came out of this whole journey. Yeah, and so she was picked up, shared, got some brand work out of that. God, I've really, you know, talking like this, you really see how I've chopped and changed over the years. So I was doing that, and then I started messing around with the camera and stop motion illustration, and you know, faffing around with that, creating the stop motions, and at the same time doing the illustration. And Not on the High Street had approached me, and I had an Etsy shop, so I was selling prints of Sassy and of leafy, flowery things that I was doing. And at the same time, I was developing my stop motion animation, and then that got picked up, and that did really well. And that's when I started doing more influencer work and more brand work, and I had an agent, and yeah, and and I freelanced doing stop motion animation as well as selling illustration on the side as well for quite a long time.
Really big, it kind of blew up a bit.
Yeah, it did. I think Sassy, she really grew my account.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, because of that, I suppose brands were interested in, you know, commissioning me and giving me stuff as they do. And yeah, but you know, it's funny because whenever I used to post something that was sponsored, it would get terrible engagement. I don't think people liked it. I was very aware of this, and this was the trigger in my head that really started to change things for me. Because as I was posting sponsored content and making all this stuff, if a post didn't do very well, it really started to affect me. And it got to the point where I didn't want to post. I was afraid of posting in case it didn't do very well, and I lost followers. And if I lost followers, I wouldn't be as attractive to brands. I wouldn't get the work that would therefore, you know, it's like this spiral. I wouldn't get the work, I wouldn't get the money in. It was a business, and the joy of creating where I first started all those years ago just went completely, and it was all about numbers and algorithm and engagement and blah la la la.
Can I ask though, just there, you know, did you have a sense of euphoria when you got to a stage where you were working with brands, you think this is doing really well, I'm enjoying this, and then was that an internal chatter that made you think, oh no, I've got to keep this up now, and what does this mean now? And or was there an external outcome where were you noticing that, oh, my figures are dropping, no brands are approaching me as much anymore? So was there a correlation, or was there just your internal fear and then nothing happening untoward outside, if you see what I mean?
It's probably initially it was my internal critic, my imposter syndrome of, I'm not a trained artist, how can I be doing this? You know, I'm self-taught, you know, just total imposter syndrome. And then I think the algorithms did change, and then there was a correlation between, and obviously there was more people coming up, and fashions change on Instagram. What I was doing, a lot of people were then doing, and then it became something else was fashionable, and so the brands were going for those accounts. So that was just a natural progression, but I took it very personally and internalized it and thought, oh, I'm rubbish, you know, real crisis of confidence thing going on. And then it was around 2018, I think. I just had a meltdown, and I walked into my husband was shaving at the time in the bathroom, and I walked in, it was the morning, and I was knackered because I hadn't slept very well because I was worrying. I used to dream Instagram. And I just stood there and I said, I just don't know who I am anymore. It was like this real emptiness. And my creative ideas, I didn't feel they were my own. I just felt I was following fads and whatnot. And I knew I had to change. I knew that this platform had done something to my brain. And that was that was the moment. You know, you have these moments in your life where all things seem to just go from there, and that was my moment of just having this meltdown. And it wasn't really until about 6 months later that I think I stopped posting. It's all a bit of a blur now, to be honest. But during that 6 months, I started doing I did a MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy course, because I was having trouble sleeping and anxiety and just feeling generally rubbish. So I started doing that, and that really helped. I was still doing the Instagram thing, but that mindfulness was really helping me. And I realized that a lot of my anxiety was coming from this job I had, this Instagram social media thing. I mean, and I'm one of these people that, you know, is quite sensitive and takes things to heart anyway. So sometimes I think for people who are a little bit like that anyway, social media isn't brilliant for your mental health.
I kind of think also that sensitivity can be a real portal for creatives, because it's that sensitivity that touches some other unknown space that leads to the creative process and the outcome. And then we're sharing it on a platform like Instagram. And like you said, initially it feels great, like this symbiosis with a community and your creativity, but it can turn, when it turns into a business, like there's another aspect to creativity when it turns into a business.
Yeah,
I think then our sensitivities can then sometimes work against us, which is what
exactly.
can happen. Yeah.
It's a help and a hindrance, isn't
Yeah.
it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's managing that, which they don't teach you, you
No.
know,
And I don't,
they they are.
when you begin, I think like when I started on Instagram, I didn't think of it like that. Like I was just sharing. I thought this is brilliant that this exists as a platform. It's free. We can share our work. It felt like all the gatekeepers had been taken away because I'm self-taught. So it was really difficult to get into the industry before. And all of a sudden I felt like, oh, I'm allowed in. I can just share my work and I don't have to wait for someone to let me in.
Yeah.
But then, as you said, as time goes on, it becomes like, it can become quite a negative, it has negative impact on you, and there's a pressure that's unheard of, really, because it's taken so lightly, social media. It's like, well, just post on Instagram, it's just a post on Instagram, it's not anything to write home about. But as the creative behind those posts, they're not just posts, they lend themselves in so many directions. None of us are really just randomly posting. We think about the content, how it's received, how it's put across, what it says about our brand, how it's received by our customers. It's a massive minefield. So I think we have a disconnect with seeing it as some kind of, like fun platform that you just share your dinner on, which it can be. And then when, as a business, it's a different beast then.
Yeah,
And
you're emotionally invested.
yeah, you are. And you do think it says something about you, because it's very hard to disengage your creative work, which we feel is really a part of us. And we're exposing that to the world like a journal extract. And then at the same time, we're allowing the whole world to see it. And we all know we shouldn't live for vanity metrics like your likes and comments, but it's really hard as a human being not to engage.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're not robots, so we
No, and I'll get onto this, but these platforms are designed to get into our brains and make us feel like that, and play, not make us feel like that, but they play on these very human characteristics of wanting validation. The platforms play on that.
Yeah. I mean, they're created for that. It's just like fast food is created to hit our taste buds for salt and sugar.
Exactly. Yeah.
Social media, those red dots and those likes, they release,
Dopamine,
they release
dopamine hits. Yeah, exactly.
Silicon Valley know about that. They're not just creating platforms just for the fun of it like that.
They're not.
No.
They're not. They're creating them to make money.
Yes.
At the end of the day, they're businesses, and as much as they've given us opportunity, it's a hard one, isn't it? We know what they're doing, and at the same time we're still using them and we're still relying on them.
We are.
And I haven't found a happy place with that yet.
No, because I have these little fantasies of coming off social media altogether, and I just can't fathom how I would run the business fully without that platform. So I have great admiration for businesses that are self-sufficient enough with their mailing list or their community outside of social media to, if they decide to come away completely. And I don't know if I'd come away completely, but there's always this little fantasy of, imagine if you just didn't have to do social media and you were there and you were still creating and there was still a business, but it wasn't reliant, or you didn't feel it was reliant on social media. And I think the naivety when we all start on social media, that it is a wonderful platform, because it is, and it's a wonderful opportunity. And then there's this other side to it, which we don't always talk about, do we? Like, we're having a conversation about it, but we don't really speak about it like this, the darker and heavier side to social media. And, our posts wouldn't do as well if we just kept going on about how much of a labor it is or how difficult we're finding it, because it would become a morbid platform for us then, So we have to kind of, sometimes there's a putting on a front, which I don't think is good for our mental health, that we put an image out there of this glossy reel of success. And somebody might look at your feed and just think, oh, look how phenomenally well she's done, isn't she lucky, etc., and not really know anything about behind the scenes.
Exactly. And it's not real life, is it? Instagram, social media, it's not real life, and we only present our best self I mean, there are people now who are being a bit more sort of authentic, and I don't like that word, to be honest. It seems to be bandied around. That seems to be the
hijacked a bit,
it's a bit of a buzzword, isn't it? Oh, I'm so authentic with my shiny pictures. Yeah, it's a strange place. But part of what I then went on to do was study this very thing.
Yeah.
And learn exactly what the platforms were doing to our brains, and why we suffer mentally from the comparison,
Yes.
the pressure to keep up. It's I wish I could get everyone to do this course that I did, because it's so eye-opening, and I found it life-changing. So I probably should say what it was, actually.
What would
It was
you say are like highlights for us that aren't doing the course, but any takeaways from that course that you think, it'd be great for people to know?
Yeah, so the course I did was called Consciously Digital. It's a coaching course, and I found it as a result of me researching what was happening to my brain.
Yeah.
And I didn't initially decide I wanted to be a coach. I just wanted to learn about what the technology was doing, and what the tech giants do to us, and why, when I see a little red dot on my app, why do I feel so compelled to check my phone? So first of all, the key thing to remember with any of these social media platforms is they want your attention. So if you've seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix, your attention is money. So the longer they keep you in the platform, the more ads they can serve you, so they're making more money from their advertisers. So every little trick, all the lovely little shiny stories and reels and all these lovely little things to keep you engaged, and that the reason that you go on for 5 minutes and find yourself there half an hour later, it's all done deliberately. And even things like when you open up Instagram and there's a very, very slight delay.
Yes.
It's done deliberately, because it just creates that apprehension.
Is that done deliberately?
It's done deliberately, just very slightly. And what's happening is, in your brain, people talk about dopamine. The reason that the whole thing with dopamine is it's the reward, it's the anticipation. So it's the anticipation of seeing how many likes you've got, seeing how many comments you've got, that will fire, that releases the dopamine. So it's the anticipation of the reward.
Wow.
That's why there's these little delays. You get the notification with 1 or 2, the number, whatever, on the likes bit, and you want to see who said what. It's just constant. It's constantly at you. Oh, I'll just see what's, I'll just keep swiping. I'll just keep the infinite scroll. The reason that you scroll and scroll and scroll, it's the reward. The reward for scrolling. The dopamine is flooding your brain, and it feels good, and we want more of it, so we go back to it.
It does. And also, though, it's a bit like any kind of thing that's not great for you, any addiction. You need more of it to get the hit.
Exactly.
And you're spending longer on a platform, because when we first get to it, 10 minutes might hit us enough, and that's great. And then it gets to an hour and you're not getting that hit, so you're spending more and more time.
Exactly.
Yeah, God.
Exactly.
I didn't know that pause was deliberate.
Yeah, all of those little tricks, sneaky tricks. And I'm sure that those developers sitting in Silicon Valley aren't bad people at all. But they want to make money. But I just urge people to remember this, and to know that all the little tricks, all the little red dots and hearts and likes and all that stuff, it is done on purpose to keep you in the app and to serve you more ads, to make more money for them. And if you're okay with that, brilliant. But it does have an effect.
I think it's really difficult as a human being, because we're all human and we've got our own patterns of conditioning. We might have our own insecurities, and then these apps are playing into them, and it's hard, even if you know the facts. Like, I can know the facts that having a certain food group or a drink isn't good for me, but I can still go ahead and do it. because there's another system working within me that is conditioned to want that like, or want that need, or need that approval. And I think this is where with social media it can get really intertwined, because it's hard to break out of that unless something major happens where you see right through it and you're thinking, no, I don't want to be playing this game to this extent.
But you know that sugar,
yeah,
you know the consequences of sugar. You're very, you know, we all know sugar, fats, blah blah blah. We all know the consequences of having too much of that, and we can make a choice. We have that choice. Now, I'm not saying we don't have that choice on social media and on apps, and emails, another one really addictive. It's the fact that it's quite nefarious. The methods that have been used, I find, are quite nefarious. We're not aware. People aren't aware of the methods that are being, like, they're not aware of the data that's being mined as well as we use the apps. And for me, it's about the choice and about transparency that I would like more people to be aware of. And that's why The Social Dilemma was such a good documentary, if you haven't seen it. And so, you know, there's a lot more people now in the digital well-being world talking about this stuff,
because it's a bit more of an awareness game, isn't it? Because like you said, with groups we know the outcomes, and with it's kind of fairly new as much as it isn't new, the whole world of social media, so we don't always know the after effects and the consequences of it. And it's a bit of a slow boil for people to come up and speak about that and say, this happened to me, this is the effects. It's not all just gloss and show highlight reels, you know. And that takes a bit of momentum. It takes a bit of time for that to come forward, I think, and for all of us to learn from our own experiences that might be the case.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, it is coming out. There's people like me going on about it,
which is great. Which brings me on to the topic I kind of wanted us to also talk about, which is trusting our own guidance, our own inner wisdom, intuition, whatever name we have for it, as opposed to being told things and us overriding our own wisdom in favor of what other people, even if they're experts, are telling us about ourselves. And so when it comes to your creativity, and I did want to know about this when you were creating, that when you created Sassy initially and when you started the journey initially, the feeling I would think was more intuitive, that, you know, your baby's asleep, I want to share something, I'm going to do this now. And then compared to when you're at the height of being branded and having an income from it, whether the creativity felt different, because I know from my experience there's a difference, and whether that's me not following intuition or me now creating for an audience, and that difference is what I'm talking about. So can you kind of describe the differences you feel when you're creating from your own intuition and when you're creating from like outer world directives?
Yeah. So yes, with Sassy initially it was just, I'm going to try this is fun, you know, and that just, there was no pressure. It was just, I'm just going to mess around, I'm just going to play. To then feeling like something's expected of you. You know, you're expected to be creating this character and, you know, use the flowers, and then if you don't, then no one's going to like it. There's such a difference when it's a difficult one, because if you're an artist, like I make stuff now and nobody sees it and I love it, and I have this real problem sometimes of what's the point. But it feels amazing. It feels really good. And then I'll get a brief to do something and it's a pain in the ass. And it's like, I've got no idea, you know, there's like this pressure. It suddenly becomes a pressure, and the joy goes out of it. And I guess that's what happened to me on Instagram, is the joy went out of it, the joy of creating. And I often wonder, I'd love to hear from other creatives who get into that. You know, you've really grown on Instagram and you've got your stuff out there now, and you've got, you know, brands and you work with. It's really interesting to know how other creatives manage keeping the joy of creating with fulfilling a brief, an expectation, because as soon as there's other people's expectations on you, it becomes a pain in the ass sometimes, to be honest, especially if they want something that you're bored of, like that happened with Sassy, you know, I got bored.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my work, the work I'll be creating now won't be taken up, but work I created 2 years ago, there'll be an interest. There seems to be like a 2-year lag with everything I create, and so everything I create 2 years ago, there'll be a real interest in, and brands will be interested in. That will be an uptake. But now I'll be currently working on a whole other style of work, but they'll be interested in that style. And I always think I have to wait another 2 years before people get engaged with this style of work, because there seems to be a bit of a pattern. And I don't know, because sometimes it's like when I'm creating my own work for myself, it's like you said, there's just complete freedom. I'm just literally like a child just creating art like I would when I was 5. There's no difference literally between me creating when I was a child to me creating now. And then somebody will come along, a brand will come along and say, this piece of art we like, could you recreate that in less than 24 hours for 4 bottles? We're going to sell this. It has to have this on it. It has to have that. Go. And it's really, and I really try hard not to fall for that pressure. And I try to create like an environment of how I would normally have my creative environment. And I try to relax. And I think just do what you love doing. And there's always a difference. There's just never, I can't get that complete flow, because when I create, I don't put a deadline on it, and I don't put, it has to have these ingredients, the audience have to know they're buying this, and it has to give off a feel of Christmas, and you know, all of these kind of notions that people put on the work. And then they'll say, make it look like your work. And I think, but my work wasn't created with that pressure on it. So it's a whole other style of work. It's a whole other industry then, because you're like, oh, we're doing it like this for this, but we all want to carry on creating, so we need to get paid to be able to carry on creating.
This is the disconnect. Yeah, this is where the tension is. The whole still being creative and still making money if you choose to make money from your art, and just being open to that. When you start creating commercially, there is pressure, and you are going to have a lot more expectation and deadlines. And some people thrive on that, to be fair. You know, some people love that, and that's where they get their they feel more creative. And but it just depends on your personality and what you're doing and where you are in your life as well. So I gave it all up because I didn't want that pressure. Gave everything up and got a part-time job to make some money.
And then how did that feel? Like, how did that feel?
Amazing. I was free. I didn't look at Instagram. I didn't earn as much money, I'll be absolutely honest. I had to take a big income cut, and it was, you know, that was stressful, making that decision. But I just thought, this is not good for my creativity. I hate it. I'm dreading getting briefs in, and this isn't a way to be. And I've got this voice in my head all the time telling me I'm not good enough, or, you know, I should be doing this. You should, it's that should word, isn't it? Should do this, that, and the other.
Did you grieve? Did you grieve a loss? Did you grieve a loss of that?
Yeah, definitely. And you've no idea how many times that my account, GeorgieStClair, nearly got deleted.
Really?
I was just like, because I deleted everything as well. I deleted my original website. I deleted, I stopped my Etsy shop. I deleted Pinterest. I deleted Facebook. I deleted Twitter.
They're big moves to make for something.
But I needed that mental space. I had to get that mental space back, and knowing it was all there, it was like a little beast that needed feeding. And whilst it was there, it was giving me, it was trying to get to me, you know, and it was always a temptation to go back on. So I deleted everything except the Instagram account, because it also had oh, you're still there? There you are.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, it had emotions attached to it.
Yeah.
So I couldn't bring myself to delete it, which I'm pleased about now, because I'm still in contact, you know, like this. Lovely.
And it's like, it's like a baby. You've grown that, you know, from scratch. You know, there's another emotional element to it, which there's memories attached to that. You remember your child being born, you remember your child growing while they're napping, and so there's positive memories associated. And that deletion is very final, isn't it? Because if you came back to Instagram now, you'd be starting again at 0, and then
I've started another account and I'm like, how do you grow this thing? This is impossible.
You forget that connection you built up is back to 0 when you, because I've got another account as well for the Spirit of Creating, and I just think, oh my God, this is so difficult because there's no reach.
No.
And then you forget that you've built up over time. That's why there's an element of reach. It doesn't just happen overnight. And now Instagram's a flooded platform as well, so it's like a whole different game too.
And do you find though, when you look back at your feed, Illustrating Rain feed, though, it's also a really nice record of watching your artistic journey as well, like how you start, where you started and where you've gone. It's fascinating.
And just your work, even how that develops.
Exactly. And
I look back and I remember just, you know, you just get like 3 likes, but you were just so happy with your 3 likes. You could share your work. You're like, oh, 3 people liked it and 2 of them are my sisters, but it's really because, you know, I do have this, I speak to other creatives and creatives that want to start a business and want to start an art business, and you know, they want to make an income. That's kind of a goal as well. And I always do say to them, there's nothing as lovely as that feeling of when you just started creating. And I remember first launching my business, and I did want to make an income from it. That's why I launched it as a business. But that is like a really, I know I'm looking at it in rose-tinted spectacles, but it's that idyllic time where all this hope and your dreams, there's just pregnant with possibility. And then you're creating just with the hope of what it's going to do. And that it's a lovely space to be in. And then, you know, when other people might look and say, oh, but it's great now because you're making an income from it. And you're thinking, it's true, it is, but it feels really different to that first, you know, that when you're green to it, you just don't know what, and you don't even know the sinister side of people approaching your work, stealing your work, copying your work. None of that side is even, you're just not privy to it until you're in it, you know, really. And then you're negotiating contracts and this whole other side. But then I don't want to put people off either, because it's incredible to be able to be paid to create art as well.
Oh, it's amazing. It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. It really is. And, you know, I don't want it to be, you know, that whole starving artist myth. I don't want that just to keep being prevalent, so people are too scared to even have a go. But then I think it's important to be able to speak about these things too, because in a way, creatives can speak to other creatives about it, but we do it quite behind closed doors. We don't necessarily do it openly on a platform to say, well, this also occurs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's a good point. It is a good point. And I think it's all back to awareness. If you're aware from the outset, I was talking to someone yesterday and they do mentoring with young people who want to go into a creative career. And one of the things that they teach them is, you know, you have to do tax returns and you have to, you know, support yourself maybe with another job, a part-time job, or you're going to have to, you know, diversify what you do. It's not just you sit in your studio all day being creative. It doesn't work like that. And as long as you're aware of that and you're comfortable with that, then brilliant. You know, again, it's all just back to this awareness.
And also it's a bit like being in touch with what works for you as a person.
Exactly.
So you know, I might not be what was it called? I don't know what that personality is called, type A, where you're just very go-gettery and very business oriented. So it might not work for you on some level, and you might just be a small business. You never expand. You just stay as a one-woman show, which is fine as well. Or you might be really happy creating 3 days of the week, and 2 days of the week you take a job. But then we have to touch base with our own intuition again there, and say, well, that might work for that person, but I don't want to be doing that. And that's a hard one, because again, we see a highlight reel on Instagram and websites and social media. So we think, oh no, I want her life. I think I want her business, but I want to be me still. And the two won't match, because you know, that takes a lot of, every YouTube video, every Pinterest post, every Instagram, it takes work to do. And the more you're engaged in it, the more work it takes. It's not, you know, devoid of, it really does depend on what lifestyle you want as well with it. you know.
And that's knowing yourself, isn't it? That's going back to intuition. And we aren't that other person over there. We are us.
No.
I mean, it's such an obvious thing to say, but you know, we're not so and so over there who's so, you know, doing really well. They've had their own issues and we don't know what's happening behind closed
And
doors.
we don't know what's happening with their internal mechanism. We don't know what's
Exactly.
really what they're going through. We just like what they've got, let's say. We just like their followers. We like the fact that they're working with so and so and that aspect of it. But I do think that whole idea of our inner wisdom doesn't ever stop playing a part. And I think we can lose touch with that. And that's what I think is something we have to kind of, it's like our North Star that we've got to keep, that can I sense that still? Because there'll be times when I can't sense it and then I know I'm off track. Like, I just think, oh, haven't felt in flow for so long. And things might be outwardly doing well. Because I remember at the height of like a couple of years ago, outwardly it looked like I was doing really well. And inwardly, I think I just felt like I don't have that sense of feeling of, you know, that fulfillment that you were speaking about when you first started creating. And I thought, God, I've gone so far from where I was when I began Illustrating Rain and the joy I had in creating it. And then it had slowly morphed into what I would call the equivalent of a job that you don't really like, but now you're doing that. And I thought it's weird that you can create that and it's kind of morphing into it without you even noticing. So you have to kind of keep touching base again and saying, is this something I want to do? Even if the outward world really responds well to it, but is it something I want to do? And I always say to other creatives, be careful about starting something you don't enjoy, because if it takes off, you're going to be doing it for a lot of your time. And that's a tricky, you know, scenario to be in, because outwardly you look like you're doing really well and lucky you, and inwardly like, I didn't really like creating that, but now I seem to be creating it all the time.
And I hate it. I hate my work. So how did you find peace with that? How did you find your way again with it?
Well, in a way, I wouldn't say I was lucky. COVID happened and then the business took a hit. And so then it made me step back and think, right, if I'm going back into this, I really want every aspect of it to be stuff I really enjoy doing and it generating income. And because in a way it got taken out of my hands, the income from certain areas stopped because of COVID. I couldn't go and do that anymore. And then it was like, right, what is it you really want to do again? And then that gave me time. Like, you took time out, and this was involuntary, but I had to take a step back.
Yeah.
And then it did make me think that you can have an income and you can be a working artist, and you can also choose what kind of work you want to do. You don't have to say, I mean, at the beginning, I wouldn't say no to anything, because it was just like, I can't believe someone's willing to pay me to do anything like this. So I'll just take it. Whereas now there's a bit of a discretion, because I want to matter too to the whole thing. I want to feel good in what I'm creating. And if I want to be in it for the long haul, I'm going to have to take care of myself. It can't just be, because then it's just a business. And then I would rather sell bog roll and make money, because then that's just a business too, isn't it? And I think the stress is an actual fact of creating the toilet roll. It just gets manufactured. You know, you just delete the middleman, if you see. So I think that's made me think I want to be in touch. And I think I've always been in touch with it, but I know I lost it. I did lose it when it became more of a business than about the creative aspect. In actual fact, when it was doing its best, I wasn't even needing to create, because people were buying old work. So there wasn't even the creative element involved. But that's what I'm most interested in.
Do you think that Instagram, social media, had something to do though with the fact that you lost the joy slightly?
Probably, I mean, it probably played a part without a doubt. I think that, and I think creating work for corporate environments or industries that aren't interested in creativity, they're just interested in the outcome to sell a product, has a different feel to it when you're creating for an individual collector, you know, that loves your work and you love to create, and it's a different feel. And it was a real detached feel with a lot of my clients. They were businesses, but they had no interest in you as a person, in your creativity, in the process. It was just outcome based, because of course that's what they're after.
And they've got a bottom line, haven't they?
It's absolutely, and it's got a purpose, and this is the purpose. It just happens to be, we think your image could communicate that purpose, so we'll have it. And so then that feels really alien too, because you're connected to your work, and then you're dealing with people that haven't got any interest in it apart from
it's true.
the outcome of what it can do for their product. And so that can be a disconnect. So I think you have to go through it a bit though, Georgie, before you get that awareness. Because if you had sat there and told me this a few years ago, I would just think, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's true. You only learn from experiences.
You do. Yeah. We'd all rather not go through them, but then we'd rather not go through them either, if you see what I mean.
Because it makes you a better artist at the end of the day.
Yeah.
All of this stuff is going to feed your work.
It is. And then it moves you, like you've got Swap the Scroll, which I do love the title of as well. And then it brought you into the whole creative mindfulness arena, which is a real connection between the two then, because you're talking about that kind of inner guidance and the creativity element, and you're merging them really as they should be, harmoniously together.
Yeah.
And then we create, and then whatever gets created gets created.
Yeah.
It's coming from a different place altogether then, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm very passionate about, I mean, the whole mindfulness thing. Creativity is mindful. When you're in that flow state, you're not thinking about anything else. Mindfulness isn't about sitting meditating necessarily. You can be mindful. We can be mindful just talking to each other. You can be mindful washing up. And creativity is a mindful activity. Yeah. Except when you're working for a client and that little voice is going, they're not going to like this, or it's not mindful. It's annoying. But yeah, so my whole thing with the creative mindfulness is just to bring people back, first of all, to get off the screen, get off Instagram, get off the tech, pick up a pen, and if you don't like sitting down meditating, you can access that place through creativity, and you can access it through sport, walking, cooking. For me, obviously, my thing is creativity, as it is for you as well. And just getting back in touch with you, this place inside. And not, I think the reason we started talking about this, wasn't it, because we were talking about Googling, people Googling, looking to Google for the answers, because Google doesn't have the answers.
No. And also it's kind of like, it's weird how we've almost literally been blindsided into thinking we don't know about us. How can we not know about us? It's like someone's going to give you a handbook to say, well, this is a human handbook and you can Google it. So when you're feeling a bit shit, Google feeling a bit shit, and we'll give you a solution. And no, like a child doesn't Google anything. A child will cry if it wants to cry, then it'll go and colour if it wants to colour, then it'll shout if it wants to shout, and then the cycle is met. They haven't got any extra thinking around their behaviour like that. And I think we've reached an all-time high in outsourcing ourselves to other people. Never before have we outsourced this level, whether it's an expert on Instagram, whether it's Googling, or a self-help author, whatever it is. We're advocates of going outside of ourselves. And I think with your Swap the Scroll and creative mindfulness, it's a calling back in, like, come back, you're good, you do know, and this is a way of touching base with what you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go from there, as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, I'll give you a bit of geeky bit of information here. So you when you're on, you got your sat nav, you got your Google Maps, and my husband does this all the time. He's like, no, that the sat nav doesn't say to go that way, and I'm like, no, but we can go that way, it's a shortcut. No, it doesn't say that way. So there's research to say that when you rely on things like Google Maps, you're not taking in the landmarks, because what we do naturally is we create a map in our heads. We have this ability inside us, we have internal GPS. So by outsourcing that to Google, you don't take in as much information, you don't take in the landmarks, you're less likely to remember the journey. And I did this experiment when I was studying of getting to a place without relying on the sat nav.
Okay.
And I got there. I got there. And I remembered everything about the journey, and I didn't have to rely on this blooming app, which probably would have sent me the long way around anyway, because it was only a local place, so I know, Sussex. But it was so interesting to see how I was like, okay, I can't necessarily remember that bit, but I'm just going to let my brain just do its thing. And it remembered, it brought the information out. The other thing that we've started doing in our house is, when you forget a title or an actor's name or anything like that, what we do now is we don't Google. We're like, okay, we're just gonna leave it, and it comes back. It might be an hour later, but it comes back because you're in your head. You have everything you need. Obviously, if you need to learn to knit or to fix a tire, Google's brilliant. But the Googleization of our brains is
I love that.
It's known as. You don't Google it. Put the phone down and let your brain access its memory stores. And like I say, as simple as remembering an actor's name or a title of a film or anything like that, and it will do you so much good. It will do your brain so much good.
It's the balance, isn't it? Because we have this technology which is phenomenal that we can talk about, and you're
exactly
there, and that's great. And then there's the other aspect, which is decide. You have to have a bit of discretion, I think, now. So do you really need to Google that film, or could you just wait for it to come in?
Yeah, exactly.
And trusting yourself. I think we lose trust in ourselves when we keep going back to the phone, because why would we trust ourselves then if we think Google has told us this, that, or the other? And I find it really strange, and I do this myself, but I will look at my phone to tell me what the weather's like, and I'm looking at the window at the same time. It's like, well, there you go. That's what the weather's doing. But I will still look at my phone to look at what the weather's saying. And I just think, you can even tell when it's going to rain because there's clouds.
You can tell. You feel it, don't you?
You can see it. My allergies play up. My body's telling me it's going to rain. It's all there. And then I'll still look it up.
It's mad, isn't it?
Which is crazy.
It's the same with fitness trackers. That's another thing. I gave up my There's another thing I gave up, my Fitbit. Because you don't need a machine to tell you if you've done enough. You feel it. You feel, and the machine doesn't take into consideration how much sleep you've had, what you've eaten that day, you've had an emotional day with something gone wrong with your kids. It doesn't take all that into consideration. But yet we're like, oh no, I haven't done my 10,000 steps or whatever. I need to do more.
It doesn't make you do the 10,000 steps either. It just reminds you of what you haven't done, what you failed.
It makes you feel bad. It's like, you're lazy. You haven't done your 10,000 steps.
Yeah, you do
feel bad then.
And there's so many things to feel bad about then. Yeah. And there's all these apps to tell you why you're not doing so well.
Yeah.
Really, like, walk if you need to walk. It's kind of like, frozen again.
Oh, there you go. There you're back. You're back.
Yeah,
no, it's true.
I think we've kind of lost touch with a bit of that. And I think as creatives, in a way, everyone has this, but because when we go to create something, we have to touch that space. Knowing, because that's what we create from. We create from an unseen space, and it's an unspoken space. And that's something I think we have to stay in tune with, even when we're not creating. Yeah. And I think that can be the difficult thing to do, because we don't always.
Yeah, definitely. Turn the devices off.
Yes, and then just focus on what you're doing. Do it to the extent you want to do it, and then put it down and move on.
Yeah, exactly. Just trust that intuition. Trust yourself.
Yeah.
The answers aren't on Google, and the creative inspiration isn't on Pinterest.
No, it's not.
The creative inspiration is when you go outside and you're out in nature and you're getting all the wonderful, things that nature give you.
And it's like osmosis. It's just churning internally, and then you come and create, and it's all there.
Yeah.
Which is going to be way more there than if you just scroll Pinterest for 4 hours and then look for inspiration.
Yeah, and be bored. It's so important to be bored, to just wander and daydream, because that, again, getting into, brain neuroscience and things like that, that time where you let your brain just rest, it's doing stuff. Again, how many times I like doing code words, you know, these things where you have a number and it corresponds to a letter.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
I'll get stuck, or Sudokus or anything like that. I'll get stuck, I'll walk away, go and do some washing up, come back, I've got the answer, because I've allowed my brain to rest. And it's like with a creative problem, you know, you can't trying to come up with a brief. Best thing you can do, don't go on Pinterest looking for inspiration. Best thing you can do is do some hoovering or some washing up, or go for a walk, or phone the friend, anything to stop you thinking about the creative problem, because your brain is working on it and you'll get the solution.
It's because you can lead to rumination. That's it. You just ruminate endlessly, and it sucks up time and hours. And I think we have this false idea that if we go to somewhere like Google or Pinterest, they will solve our problem for us, and they're not going to solve that problem. And it could be as simple as getting the Dyson out and having a Hoover, and you won't think to do that, but you will think to pick up your phone, because we don't even think, we just pick up our phone constantly, all the time now. And it's weird that there was ever a time when we didn't. I mean, for our generation, there was a time when we didn't pick up a phone. They didn't exist. And we did get bored as children, and that was
brilliant.
That was norm. It was nothing to be scared of. And now it's almost like we're scared to be in our own company on our own, without referencing somebody. It's weird, because it's like we're scared of being alone, and yet what could be lonelier than using a device to feel connected? Which is
so true. Go out and just, you're walking down the street or waiting for a bus, and everyone's like this, looking at their phone, not talking to each other and not taking in what's happening around them, you know, just like, ooh, like zombies.
I saw this sculpture in Amsterdam. I haven't seen it, but I saw a picture of it, and it was this bench, and it's these 3 people have been cast in plaster on these benches, and they're just on phones, and the phones are lit up, so their faces are only lit up from these phones, and they're all just sitting there, but not together. They're just all on this, which is us now.
Yeah, it is alone together. Together,
absolutely. Which is incredible, really.
Yeah, but what do you do? I mean, it's hard. It's like, again, it's back to that awareness. Podcasts like this, you know, chatting like this is a really good thing, you know, just to hopefully bring awareness.
And I think for everyone, in a weird way, I think the message is to get to know yourself a bit more. You know, whatever that might be. And you might love social media, and you might love the internet, and you might want to be on it 90% of the time, which is great, but have a purpose for being on it then, and know why you're there, and know that your identity isn't interwoven into that you are a separate being away from that, you know. You're a whole person without the likes, the comments, and the adoration of that, because that can ebb and flow. And, you know, you're constant. You're not at the ebb and flow. You are constant as a person. It's kind of touching base with that a bit more.
And quite often, you know, you'll turn to social media or your phone because there's something in you, like you might be lonely, or, you know, and that's why it's so easy to pick up your phone, or you're bored. So it's like just taking that moment to actually think, okay, hang on a sec, what's really going on here? Do I really need to look at Instagram, or am I just feeling bored, or
am I upset about something, and what has upset me then?
Exactly.
It's distracting from our emotions, because we don't want to feel what we're feeling.
No, and this is
and that you don't think that feeling is your portal. Go into the feeling, don't go away from it. We're in the opposite way round in contemporary society right now. That we're looking for distractions from our emotions, where you can just feel them instead.
Exactly. And it's hard to face emotions when they're uncomfortable.
And you know, there might be things that you don't want to look at. Of course there are. There'll be loads of things you don't want to look at, but you can't spend your whole life running, and especially running to a phone or a device, and then saying, you know, because again, those things that we don't want to face are normally, again, the biggest treasures that we've got to mine, you know, and that will tell us something about ourselves and what we really want. And then we're not touching base with that at all.
Absolutely. And then you really lose that sense of self, don't you?
And then sometimes you just veer so far away, you've got a long way back. You know, it feels like a long journey back, and really it's always with you, so you don't need to go so far from it. But I do think sometimes you have to make a conscious effort, which brings me to the final aspect of how do you keep in touch with that intuition or wisdom on a daily basis? Because I imagine you make a point of doing that more now.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, as you said at the beginning, I'm training to be a mindfulness teacher now. So mindfulness and meditation is a huge part of my life and practice. And I make sure that I have silent time, and I have solitude away from the family as well.
Yeah.
But I'm not, I went through it those few years ago, and then deciding to give it all up. I really went through it, and it was really uncomfortable, and mental health wasn't brilliant.
Yeah.
And but I can be okay with that now, because I've done a lot of, God, it all sounds a bit, I've done all this work, on myself. I've got comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you can be, if you don't have the highs, if you don't have the lows, you don't have the highs.
Yeah.
And I'm uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so obviously, because of what I'm doing, I do spend a lot of time just in that present moment. And I tell you, actually, the other day I had that rush of, I need to be on Instagram, I need to be posting, and like this panic of, oh, if I don't get on there, I'm not going to make this, I've got this new business, and if I don't do it, I'm going to be rubbish, and it's all going to go to shit. And I just, whereas before I would have rushed off to Instagram or done something, posted something, but I just was like, oh, this, I remember this feeling. I've had this. Yeah. Okay, this is interesting. And I just sat literally just sat with it, like in a chair. And I was like, okay, this is me feeling insecure, and but I didn't rush off to Instagram. And I think that's what I'm trying to say with what I'm doing, is just you don't even have to stop your habits, just notice them. Just notice the thought processes, notice what you're feeling, and then make a choice. Or it's about choice as well,
and being in a space to be able to observe your thoughts, because otherwise you're just in reaction to them all the time.
And like a lot of people, I'm saying, I take a moment in a quiet space. You can do this in a busy room, on the bus. You just literally, what's happening in my gut, you get these gut feelings, or you get an ache in your arm that it's a sort of a stress thing, or it's just, use your body. Your body tells you what you need to know. Again, going back to the intuition, your body has all the answers. You don't need to go to Google.
That's fantastic to know, because there's this massive preconception with meditation and mindfulness that it has to be done in solitude, in silence, for copious amounts of hours, and it's just not that.
No,
touching base with your body, feeling your hands, feeling your feet, even just feeling the ground beneath you, anything that can ground you, or just one breath, anything like that can be meditative.
Absolutely. And anywhere. You can notice it anywhere, in any situation. And it's really good to try and do that. If you notice yourself losing the plot, like I felt myself the other day, just going a bit, spiraling out of control, just noticing that. And it takes practice, if you're not used to doing that, it takes practice. But what happens is you don't automatically react. You don't go to that animal brain that's just wanting to react straight away. You start using your rational thinking brain to just go, okay, hang on a sec, I'm actually feeling lonely now.
And it's worthwhile cultivation practice, isn't it, really? Rather than saying, for the rest of my life I will be in reactive mode, because who wants to live like that?
Which is stressful, and that's what social media does.
And you burn out.
Exactly.
That's fine. You will lose the plot at some point, and that will be the end of that. You can't carry on. That's not a realistic, way of living, I don't think, for the long haul. It's not. It's short-lived, short bursts of living, that is.
Yeah, and I think that's why people are having so much issue now with the tech. We've all been on Zoom a lot. Emails and social media, and all the being bombarded all the time with messaging and technology. Is we're constantly reacting. We're always reacting to things, and it's stressful.
It is, and everything feels urgent. There's a state of emergency all of the time.
Yeah, it is.
And
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
not, a body isn't prepared to live like that, because our body's
No.
not created to live like that. But in this era, we really are in a state of, I always feel everything's a bit urgent. You know, if I get an email, I think I must respond to that. And, you know, have to look professional. And if you get this message, you don't want people to be offended, so you want a message. And everyone's got this kind of sense of wanting to be heard instantly.
Yeah.
And it, you know, and then that's created this sense of urgency and emergency all the time.
Yeah, it's just so true.
And then we're spent, because and then real emergencies do happen, and then we're spent before they even come along, because we're like, I thought every day was an emergency, but now I'm in a real emergency, and it's, you know,
And it's really not, you know, an email comes in, it's really not, is it? You know,
no,
it can wait.
Instagram post, it really isn't.
Yeah.
And there's only so many things you could spend your energy on like that, worrying and concerning yourself, and 99% of them aren't worth your time.
They're really not.
No.
They're really not. And you know, it's also managing people's expectations. So people know me now, but I don't instantly respond to things.
Which is great, because you're setting a boundary there.
Yeah.
We can be at fault for being so responsive.
Yeah, people got really cross with me in the beginning. Like, and when I came off Facebook, people were really cross. It was like I was shunning them, you know. They were really cross with me. But and like if I didn't because somebody told me, a French lady, she's very direct.
Yeah.
I didn't answer my WhatsApp straight away, and I was like, well, no, I didn't. And what difference did that make? We were trying to make an appointment to have some coaching. I was giving her some coaching, and I was like, so what, you know, what was the worst that could happen? And she was like, oh yeah, well, no, nothing really, I just had to wait. And we got the appointment sorted, and now she does it. Now she doesn't, she's told people she has time off after like 6 o'clock, or I think it was. She doesn't respond straight away, and people, okay, they're like, okay, fine, you know. So she's managed their expectation.
Yeah, because people respond to you how you're kind of projecting them to respond to you. And if you are an instant responder, then they're going to think, well, you're an instant response to respond.
Yeah, exactly. You have friends like that, don't you? You just know they're going to be answering your WhatsApp straight away.
And if they don't, what's happening here? Why aren't they responding?
Yeah, it's true. And you know, sometimes when it comes to business, running a business, if you don't respond immediately, accepting that, okay, I might not get that job because I didn't respond within the hour. It took me 5 hours to respond, and just accepting that okay, that's fine. But then I'm not going to work very well with that client anyway, perhaps, if they are so reactive. Like, that's how I work. That's right.
And then you do have to accept the fact that those losses are going to be part of the process, and that you're okay with that. And I think at the beginning that's difficult, because you're just ready to work, so you're just not willing to take any losses, really.
No, not at all.
As you go on, you've paid the price of not having those losses, so you think, no, I'm okay. I'm a bit more savvy to this. Because like you say, if they're instantly responding, their chances are they're going to be like that throughout the whole brief.
Exactly,
happening constantly.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that did happen to me really recently, and I'd set a boundary only recently, really, that on Fridays, after Friday, I don't respond to anything over the weekend. And because I deal with a lot of American clients, they're like up to 10 hours behind us. So they could still be responding to me into Friday evening, you know. But I'd cut off that time for me, like Friday evening, I'm done. Well, Friday afternoon, I get done. And then this lady emailed me from America and said, oh, you know, we want to have a meeting. And I goes, oh, well, I can only do Monday now, you know, it's Friday. And there was this urgency, and she wanted to, and I got swept up with all the urgency. And then in the end, I was doing a Zoom on a Sunday, and I had to do the job by the Monday. And then, you know, between the 24, 48 hours, my boundary just got blown out the window because I let it. And then I was in this whole experience that was just speeding up. And she was even more urgent once the job started. And I thought, this is not how I want to be working. And it's interesting because you can learn that and create a boundary, and then slip, and then kind of pop out again. Right, enough of that. I'm not doing that again.
And how did it feel when you were sort of wrapped up in that?
Do you know what? It felt horrible. I needed about 2 days to get over it afterwards.
Really tired afterwards.
Like, hoovering me up for those 20, and it was so urgent. She created such a sense of urgency, and there was a deadline on it. But I had to bear in mind that it was you know, it's a deadline for something that just humanity does not need it. It's not like,
No.
the urgency can be like it's neurosurgery and someone's being
Yeah,
and
that's an urgent thing.
yeah, but it can be created like that, you know. And if it's a big job on the table and it's big money and it's a big corporation, it can get really urgent. And then we have a false sense of that urgency and it's not real. And we have to be willing to take the losses of that as well, though.
Yeah, I wonder what would have happened if you'd stuck by your boundaries.
I don't know, because she said the deadline was that Monday, so I would have had to take the loss of not having that job, let's say.
Do you think you would have lost the job?
Yeah, because I think the deadline was that day, so it was. I mean, I think it was. Who knows?
Yeah,
I mean, she
it's
might have made
interesting.
the deadline up. I have no idea.
And
But
were you pleased with the output?
no, I was really.
Because you felt rushed.
It was so rushed, and she really wanted that flowful feeling of my work, which at 1 o'clock in the morning, Georgie, is not flowing.
No, of course.
I
But
mean,
what I would say is your work is, no one else can do your work. So if the deadline had been Monday, they wouldn't have been able to find anyone else to do what you do, because your creative work is unique.
yeah.
So I would say, the difference of a day
Yes.
wouldn't have made any difference, because
No.
they can't get it. It's not like they can go to Amazon and get it, or wherever. So,
and this is where I think when we have our boundaries in place and then we negate them, and then
you feel awful.
And then you feel awful, and you've got swept up in this state of emergency that isn't really an emergency, and then you've not even created the work you wanted to create because the deadline was just not really short.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, oh well, that wasn't a good.
Yeah.
But all of that is a learning process. So I think even when you think you've learned it, something will show up to show you when maybe you haven't fully learned it.
Yeah, well, you need that experience, don't you, for next time. It is a bit of experience.
I did appreciate it as that experience, because it did make me think again, well, how do you want to work?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to work with a client, and this is not idyllic.
And did they brief it in late then? Was that
the company itself that was commissioning it they're renowned for being late, she said. The lady said that was running it. She's a branding agency, and then she therefore had no choice but to do it on a late call as such, and that's why there was such a state of emergency around it.
See, that's so unfair on you. I mean, it's their issue that they are late briefing it in, and they've put that pressure onto you, the artist.
Yes.
Which is, being the compassionate side is, oh, she was really stressed because she was under pressure. So you can be compassionate to her, but at the end of the day, they briefed it in late. That's their problem.
Yeah, that is. And really, it's not like I knew her. I've got a fantastic relationship, so I help out. This was just a cold call of connection. So it was a lesson for me to learn, really.
Interesting. They're good lessons. They are good lessons.
Because they're good.
They're not nice at the time. But.
Yeah. And you could easily put it down to, oh, it's just a one-off, but really your life could just become that if you don't not care.
Reactive.
Yes. And clients like that can feel like they can respond to you like that.
Yeah. And they will if you let them.
They will, yes. More often than not, they do. And so you have to try to draw the line. Because like you said, they're commissioning work that can't be created other than you creating it. So it's not, the leverage of that is on your side, in fairness. But you have to have that, sense of value in your own work.
And that's the advantage of being an artist, I suppose. When you get to that stage where you're being commissioned for your work, no one else can. Well, you can get copycats, and they do exist, but at the end of the day, it's never going to be as good as the original, is it? So,
no. So there is that.
Like you say, that is leverage, and that is why they go to Artist Direct.
Yes,
because you're doing something unique and special.
Yeah. And that's something to remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though last week I forgot, Georgie.
We've all been there. God, we've all been there. My goodness, and we swear not to do it again, and we do. And like, if you really want the job as well, those jobs that come in, you're like, I really want this.
Yes.
I'll do anything.
But it's weird, isn't it? Because I did have that notion. I did want that job. But at the same time, I remember thinking, you didn't have it a minute ago and you were fine.
Yeah.
5 minutes before this email, you were fine.
Yeah.
And you didn't have the job. And then 5 minutes later, you're not fine. And that thought did keep popping into my head that day
Right.
when I was working. I thought, to think that a minute ago you were just okay with everything.
Yeah. Mad, isn't
All of
it?
a sudden you're not. Because the brain just makes things up as well, doesn't it? All of a
Yeah,
sudden,
it
it's
does.
a goalpost, and it's like, now this is important. But a few minutes ago, it wasn't important.
No, exactly. It's good that you're aware though. You're obviously really kind of in touch with your like intuition and
Yeah,
what you're prepared to
good.
do. So that's
Yes,
brilliant.
but you know, you have to keep reminding yourself.
Yeah, you do.
On a regular. So as we're closing up, I'd like to know where people can find you, Georgie, so they can be in touch with you about everything you've spoken about today. So where can we find you?
So Instagram, I'm at GeorgieStClair, but my new venture is called Swap the Scroll. There's a website that's called swapthescroll.com, and on there's loads of well, I'm building a database of creative mindfulness exercises. So you literally swap the scroll on your phone to go off and do something lovely and creative. And that also has an Instagram account, which is at Swap the Scroll. And I've also got my own art website, which is GeorgieStClair.com. But mostly you'll find me, where will you find me? Occasionally, like digitally, you'll probably find me on Instagram. Yeah, trying not to do it too much.
With boundaries in place, because I have
boundaries, yes.
I have noticed you have nice gaps between your posts, and
the Instagram doesn't like that.
No, but I do admire that. I like that. Instagram has this beast of a let's feast on daily posts. Yeah. And so I've noticed that you have a few gaps, which is great.
I'm okay. I'm all right with that. I will, get back into post, probably with Swap the Scroll. I do want to grow it. I'm passionate about it, and I want to run workshops. And so you'll probably see me over time building on that more, to be fair. Yeah. But yeah, I just pop in, pop out, enjoy your work always, and what you're doing. You're doing some brilliant stuff.
And also that is the best thing about Instagram, I think.
Yeah.
Finding other artists, finding other community people and linking up, connecting. That's one of my favorite things about Instagram, really.
Absolutely.
Where we found each other and where we discovered Sassy in the initial stages.
I'm gonna have to do a Sassy du Fleur now, you know that.
I think you have to just a little bit, just even one.
All right.
Just bring her back.
All right, just occasionally. I might pop her in every sort of night.
To Sassy every now and again for us long-termers.
So that's how you discovered me.
How I found you. And I think you were a bit of a trailblazer at the time, because I hadn't seen it before.
No.
And then after you, I have to be honest, I do see it quite often, but I think
it's everywhere now.
Yeah, but it wasn't. I think you were a bit of a trailblazer with the start animation too, because that's where I remember seeing it first. And it worked really well with the work you were doing and the work you are doing now. And I remember thinking, oh, that's brilliant. Oh, I like that. So I think you've always been ahead of the curve, which I think you are a bit again, if I'm honest. And even though this is out there, I don't think people have always linked the two with creativity and mindfulness. So I think you might be onto a new thing again.
So that would be nice.
That'd be a hat trick.
Nice. That's good, isn't it? Oh, and I'm doing mandalas now, paper mandalas. And that they're not that, like, people aren't looking for them, but you never know. That could be another thing. No. Yeah.
So see, that's 4 ahead of the curves.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll take your prediction. No pressure. Like that.
No pressure to stay ahead of the curve, Georgie. I don't want to add additional pressure. Well, thank you, Georgie, for joining us. And it's been great having a guest on. I'm going to do this more often, I think.
You should.
So if anyone has any questions, you can contact me on illustratingrain@gmail.com, and I will be back again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.